This isn't a post-apocalyptic movie set. This is Ordos, China, a multi-billion-dollar ultra-modern city. It was built for over 1 million people. Yet, it sits almost completely silent. Ordos is not the problem, though. It is the perfect monument. The monument to the 30 trillion time bomb that is quietly threatening to derail the world's second-largest economy and potentially your own retirement fund. Right now, China holds enough empty homes, 65 million of them, to house the entire population of the United Kingdom. The big question isn't why they built them. The question is, what are they hiding? To understand the 30 trillion secret, we have to start at the beginning. The year 2001. China joins the World Trade Organization, the WTO. This unlocked an export boom, flooding the country with cash. China now had two primary goals: maintain economic growth, GDP, and maintain social stability. They found the perfect engine for both: real estate. For the average Chinese citizen, owning property became the most crucial symbol. A symbol of wealth. A symbol of security. Even the path to marriage. House prices in major cities soared, making every homeowner feel wealthier. This achieved the social stability goal. But the real genius and the real danger lay in the government's financial structure. In China, the central government collects most of the taxes. Local governments, the cities and provinces, are responsible for the vast majority of spending. Spending on schools, roads, healthcare, and infrastructure. But here's the critical flaw. The problem: local governments were not allowed to borrow directly from banks. So, they invented a financial loophole, a shadow mechanism that would become the biggest debt spiral of the 21st century. It's called the Local Government Financing Vehicle, or LGFV. Think of LGFVs as shadow companies, shell corporations. They were technically separate, but functionally controlled by the local government. They are the master key to the 30 trillion secret. Here's how the loop works. Step 1. The local government seizes land from farmers, often compensating them poorly. Step 2. They inject that land into the LGFV. Step 3. The LGFV uses the land as collateral. They borrow massive amounts of money from state-owned banks or by issuing bonds. Step 4. They use the borrowed cash to fund the infrastructure. Roads, bridges, utilities, all the things that made the surrounding land even more valuable. Step 5. They then sold this newly valuable land to developers like Evergrande. This cycle was a self-fulfilling prophecy. More construction meant higher GDP figures, which secured political promotions for the local officials. The focus was not on whether people needed the houses. The focus was on whether the transaction boosted the GDP number and kept the debt machine spinning. This created an incentive structure designed to fail. Local officials were rewarded for spending and building, not for profitability or real demand. And the debt, the mountains of borrowing by LGFVs, stayed off the official government balance sheets. It became China's massive, hidden, $9 trillion shadow debt. But that's not the scariest part. The true secret lies in a different kind of debt. Debt that is 3 times larger than that $9 trillion. This system only works if house prices keep going up. But every Ponzi scheme eventually runs out of new money. The music finally stopped in 2021. The poster child for the entire leveraged system was Evergrande. They were not just a company, they were an economic force, building entire city blocks and owing over $300 billion. Their business model was, in effect, a high-speed construction Ponzi scheme. Beijing finally realized the systemic risk. They introduced the Three Red Lines policy in 2020. This was intended to force developers to deliver. It was intended to cool the market, but it acted like a sudden hard brake on a speeding train. Evergrande couldn't borrow. They couldn't finish projects. They began defaulting on their debt. And here is the human tragedy. Millions of Chinese families had paid for apartments that were now half-finished. Abandoned ghost towers. In 2022, homeowners began boycotting mortgage payments for these unfinished homes. This sparked the mortgage boycott crisis. The $9 trillion LGFV debt is only one piece of the puzzle. The full, terrifying picture, the 30 trillion secret, is the combination of LGFV debt, explicit government borrowing, and the massive off-balance sheet debt hidden in state-owned enterprises, SOEs. The Chinese state is effectively in hock for over $30 trillion. The crisis spread quickly. The dominoes began to fall. First, the developers, then the LGFVs, which couldn't sell their land anymore because developers were bankrupt. And finally, the state-owned banks. They were holding all that bad LGFV and developer debt. You might be thinking, that's China's problem. That's the biggest mistake you can make. The Chinese property collapse is not a local event. It's a global, deflationary shockwave. Reason 1. Commodities demand. China's construction sector was the world's biggest buyer of steel, copper, and cement. Now, that demand has evaporated. Commodity exporting nations like Australia, Brazil, and Chile, all major suppliers to China, are seeing their exports and growth plummet. Reason 2. Western exposure. Major Western investment banks, pension funds, and asset managers all hold exposure to Chinese debt, either directly through corporate bonds or indirectly through commodities and emerging market funds. When Evergrande defaults, that loss is ultimately borne by investors worldwide. Reason 3. The loss of the engine. For decades, China was the engine of global growth. If the $30 trillion ghost city problem forces China into a decade of stagnant growth, a lost decade like Japan's, global economic expansion slows with it. Suddenly, U.S. companies have fewer customers. Emerging markets lose their biggest buyer. The entire global growth forecast is slashed. So, let's circle back to the core question. Why did they do it? The Chinese government wasn't building homes. They were buying time and stability. They built economic growth on a foundation of debt and rising property values, because it was the fastest, most effective way to ensure people were employed and felt wealthy. The ghost cities are the physical manifestation of a flawed economic model. Growth at any cost. Now, that model has reached its mathematical limit. The debt is too large to service. The properties are too numerous to occupy. The confidence is shattered. The three possible outcomes are all painful. Scenario 1. Massive government bailouts, printing trillions to save the banks and LGFVs, leading to severe inflation. This means your money is worth less. Scenario 2. Chaotic default, allowing the banks and LGFVs to fail, leading to widespread financial panic and social instability. This is the financial version of a nuclear winter. Scenario 3. A lost decade, a slow, painful contraction as the country pays down the $30 trillion debt mountain. Choking off global growth. This means years of stagnation for the world. The world is holding its breath, watching the empty streets of Ordos. Because the greatest economic crisis of our time won't start with a stock market crash, but with a ghost city that was never meant to be occupied. If you want to understand the forces reshaping our world, from currency wars to commodity collapse, this channel is dedicated to separating the signal from the noise. Click subscribe now, and let me know in the comments. If you had to choose one Chinese bank to save or one ghost city to let crumble, which would it be and why?